The bus ride into Lagos was long and crowded, but Diana sat quietly by the window, holding Tina on her lap, while Timothy leaned against her shoulder. Mama Gray sat across from them with baskets of dried fish, yams, and mangoes stacked high around her feet. As the skyline of Lagos finally appeared in the distance, towers of glass and steel rising above the busy roads, Diana felt her heart pound with both fear and anticipation. "Children," she whispered softly, stroking Timothy's hair, "this is the beginning of a new chapter for us." Their rented apartment in Surulere was small, with peeling paint and creaking floorboards, but to Diana it felt like a palace. The children bounced excitedly from room to room, claiming corners as their own. Mama Grace immediately set about scrubbing and arranging the space, humming an ode as she worked. That night, Diana sat awake long after the children had fallen asleep, staring out the window at the glow of city lights. "I don't know who I was before, but I know who I am now. A mother, and I will do anything to give these children a future." The next morning, she rose before dawn, tied her wrapper firmly, and went with Mama Grace to the sprawling Mile 12 market. The air was thick with the scent of pepper, dried fish, and exhaust fumes as traders shouted over one another. Diana laid out fresh vegetables on a mat, tomatoes, peppers, and cassava brought from their village connections, and began to sell. Her honesty and calm demeanor quickly drew loyal customers. "Buy from Ada," one woman told another. "She gives fair measure, and her goods are always fresh." Timothy and Tina, meanwhile, began attending a local primary school. From the very first week, their teachers noticed something remarkable. Tina's questions during science lessons often left the class stunned, and Timothy had a gift for numbers, solving problems that even older pupils struggled with. Soon, they were outperforming children years ahead of them. One afternoon, the headmistress called Diana into her office. "Madam," she said warmly, "these children are not ordinary. They are brilliant. With the right opportunities, they could do great things." Diana's heart swelled with pride, though she answered humbly, "They are gifts from God, Ma. I only pray I can afford to give them the education they deserve." Meanwhile, across Lagos and Ikoyi, Oliver was adjusting to his new life as a single father of twins. Peter and Priscilla filled his one silent home with laughter, mess, and sleepless nights. Though the pain of losing Diana never left him, the children were slowly mending the cracks in his spirit. Each time Peter clung to his shirt or Priscilla giggled at his silly faces, Oliver felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. Daisy, however, was becoming more restless. She had imagined herself as Oliver's future wife, but now she found herself cleaning bottles, rocking babies, and competing for his attention with children who weren't even hers. At night, in her own home, she seethed. "These children have ruined everything. But if I can't remove them, I'll bind Oliver to me through them." Her schemes grew subtler, arranging pediatric appointments without asking, buying matching clothes for the twins with her name stitched on the tags, and introducing herself to outsiders as Annie Daisy, though in her mind, she rehearsed the word mother. Unbeknownst to her, fate was already moving against her carefully spun plans. One Sunday morning, Diana took Timothy and Tina to a church in Surulere. As the children joined the Sunday school, Diana sat quietly at the back, her heart lifted by the choir's voices. Across the city, Oliver was also at church with Peter and Priscilla, surrounded by Richard and Catherine, who had insisted on attending with their grandchildren. Two families, both incomplete, both searching for healing, worshipped under different roofs, but it was only a matter of time before paths began to cross. And the first threat of that crossing came sooner than anyone expected. At Timothy and Tina's school, a new program was announced. A citywide inter-school quiz competition for gifted children. The sponsors? Thompson Enterprises. The quiz competition was all the teachers in Surulere Primary could talk about. Bright children from across Lagos would gather at a grand hall in Victoria Island, with prominent businessmen and philanthropists in attendance. When the headmistress announced that Timothy and Tina had been chosen to represent their school, the entire class erupted in cheers. "Mama, we will make you proud," Timothy promised solemnly that evening as Diana served them steaming bowls of jollof rice. "You already make me proud every single day," Diana said, hugging them close. But later that night, When the children had gone to bed, she whispered her fears to Mama Grace. What if I can't afford to keep up with her education? What if the city swallows us whole? Mama Grace touched her hand. Child, God did not bring you this far to abandon you. The doors that need to open will open. On the morning of the competition, Diana dressed Timothy and Tina in their neatest uniforms, secondhand but freshly washed and pressed. She tied Tina's hair into neat braids, then kissed their foreheads before they boarded the school bus with their teachers. Mama Grace insisted she and Diana should come too, so they squeezed into the back of a crowded Danfo heading toward Victoria Island. Meanwhile, Oliver was seated at the front of the glittering event hall. Thompson Enterprises was one of the key sponsors, and Richard had insisted that Oliver attend with Peter and Priscilla to show the family commitment to education. Daisy, of course, accompanied them, smiling sweetly at every opportunity, though her eyes never left Oliver. When the competition began, school after school answered questions, but it wasn't until Timothy and Tina's turn that the atmosphere shifted. The two children moved with a quiet confidence far beyond their years. Who discovered the theory of relativity? The moderator asked. Albert Einstein. Timothy answered without hesitation. What is photosynthesis? It is the process by which green plants use sunlight to make food. Tina replied clearly. Round after round, they stunned the audience with their speed, accuracy, and poise. Even when given questions intended to be too advanced for primary school, the siblings answered as if they had been preparing for years. Oliver, who had been politely clapping at every turn, suddenly leaned forward in his seat. Something about the children caught him off guard. The boy's thoughtful frown, the girl's bright curiosity. He felt drawn to them, though he could not say why. Peter and Priscilla, sitting beside him, clapped excitedly. But when Timothy and Tina walked off the stage during the break, something extraordinary happened. From across the hall, Peter suddenly pointed and cried out in his baby voice. Tina! Priscilla echoed, Timmy. Oliver froze, turning to his children. What did you just say? But the toddlers were bouncing in their seats, laughing and reaching their tiny arms toward the siblings across the room as if they recognized them. Daisy leaned in quickly, her voice sharp though disguised with a smile. Oh, Oliver, children repeat all sorts of nonsense. They probably heard those names at daycare. But Oliver's eyes were fixed on the twins across the hall, his heart pounding strangely. He didn't know it yet, but the invisible bond between the four children had just spoken for the first time. And in that moment, fate had begun to stitch the torn halves of his family back together. When the competition ended, Timothy and Tina's school was announced as the winner. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, and the children were invited onto the stage to receive their medals and a small trophy. Oliver clapped louder than he realized, pride swelling in his chest for children he had only just seen for the first time. His own twins, Peter and Priscilla, were on their feet in their tiny outfits, clapping wildly too. But what unsettled Oliver was that they weren't just cheering. They were laughing and calling out Timmy and Tina over and over again as though they had just found long-lost playmates. Daisy leaned closer, forcing a gentle laugh. See how children mimic? They must have overheard the announcer. Don't overthink it, Oliver. But Oliver couldn't shake it. His toddlers rarely spoke with such clarity, yet these names rolled off their tongues naturally, as if they had always known them. He sat back down slowly, watching Timothy and Tina smile on stage as they waved their small hands to the cheering crowd. Something deep inside him stirred, an unexplainable warmth and familiarity he hadn't felt since Diana's passing. Meanwhile, at the back of the hall, Diana and Mama Grace were squeezed between other proud parents, clapping joyfully. Diana's eyes glistened with tears as she watched Timothy and Tina beam with confidence. You see them? Mama Grace whispered, nudging her. They will go far. This city will hear their names one day. Diana nodded, overwhelmed with pride, though she also felt a pang of longing. She wanted more for her children. Proper schools, endless books, opportunities she could barely dream of. She had no idea that, only a few rows away, the man she once loved and still belonged to was staring at their children with the same fierce pride. After the ceremony, chaos filled the hall as families and sponsors congratulated the young winners. Oliver excused himself from Richard and Catherine, who were busy greeting other business associates. He gathered Peter and Priscilla into his arms and followed his instincts. He needed to meet these remarkable children. He spotted them by the refreshment tables, holding cups of juice while their teacher fussed over them. Oliver walked closer, his heart pounding. "Excuse me," he said gently, crouching to their eye level. "You both did wonderfully today. Congratulations." Timothy and Tina looked up politely, smiling shyly. But before they could respond, Peter and Priscilla wriggled in Oliver's arms, reaching out toward them with squeals of delight. "Tina! Timmy!" Timothy blinked, startled. "How do they know our names?" Tina tilted her head curiously at the babies, then smiled. "They look like us, don't they?" Oliver felt a shiver run through him. The resemblance was undeniable. The same shape of the eyes, the same dimples that appeared when they smiled. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, a familiar voice called from across the crowd. "Timothy! Tina! Time to go!" Oliver straightened sharply, scanning the crowd, and for the briefest moment, his eyes landed on her. Diana, standing beside Mama Grace, looking radiant even in her simple wrapper and blouse, clapping to get the children's attention. The world seemed to freeze. His breath caught. His heart stopped. "Diana," he whispered, barely able to speak. But by the time he blinked, the crowd had shifted, blocking his view. Timothy and Tina were already running toward their mother, and in the noise and confusion of the hall, Oliver lost sight of them. Yet his soul knew. He had just seen his wife. Alive. Oliver's pulse thundered in his ears. He pushed through the crowd, one hand clutching Peter, while Priscilla clung to his shoulder. His eyes scanned desperately for that face, that impossibly familiar face he'd just glimpsed. "Excuse me. Sorry, pardon," he muttered, weaving between parents, teachers, and students. But by the time he reached the exit doors, the small crowd had spilled into the school compound, spreading like water across the grounds. Diana and Mama Grace had already slipped into the throng of departing families, Timothy and Tina skipping happily at their sides, clutching their medals. Oliver stepped outside, breathless, his gaze darting everywhere. She was here. I saw her. I'm not imagining it. "Oliver!" Daisy's sharp voice rang out from behind. She hurried up, clutching her purse. "What's the matter? Why did you run out like that?" Oliver turned to her, still scanning the crowd. "Daisy, I saw her. I swear I saw her." Daisy stiffened. "Saw who?" He swallowed hard, almost unable to speak. "Diana." For the first time, Daisy's mask almost slipped. A flicker of fear crossed her eyes before she forced a smile. She let out a sharp laugh. "Oliver, please. Not this again. You know Diana is gone. You buried her with your own hands." Oliver shook his head, restless. "No. I know what I saw." She was standing right there. Same face, same eyes, and those children, Timothy and Tina. "Daisy, didn't you notice? They look exactly like." "Stop it," Daisy snapped, her voice low but firm, glancing around at the onlookers. "Do you want people to think you've lost your mind? You're imagining things because you're under stress." She reached for his arm, softening her tone. "Please, Oliver, let's go home." But Oliver's hands trembled. He looked back toward the school gate, where families were pouring out onto the street. His instinct screamed at him to run, to search every face until he found her again. Meanwhile, just beyond the crowd, Diana and Mama Grace were walking briskly down the dusty side road that led to the bus stop. Timothy and Tina bounced beside them, still glowing with excitement. "Mama," Tina said, tugging her hand, "did you see those babies? They knew our names." Timothy nodded eagerly. "And they look just like us. Isn't that strange?" Diana chuckled, brushing their hair with her fingers. "Children notice everything. Maybe they just overheard your names being called. Don't think too much of it." But her smile faltered slightly, because in her heart, she too had felt the oddness of that moment. Mama Grace glanced at her knowingly. "The world has a way of circling back, Diana. One day, what's hidden will stand in the open." Diana sighed, pulling her children closer. "As long as it doesn't disturb their peace. That's all I want." Back at the school, Oliver stood at the gate, torn between reason and instinct. The bustle had thinned out, but Diana was gone. Still, the fire in his chest refused to die down. "She's alive," he whispered to himself. "I'll find her." And from that moment, Oliver Key could no longer return to life as it was. That night, Oliver sat alone in his study, the twins finally asleep in their cribs, the quiet of the mansion pressing on him. Yet his mind was far from restful. He kept replaying the moment at the school, the unmistakable face, the way Timothy and Tina's eyes mirrored his own children's, the way the toddlers had called out their names without hesitation. He leaned forward, his hands gripping his head. If Diana is alive, why hasn't she come back to me? Why hide? The door creaked open. Daisy slipped inside, holding a glass of warm milk. She placed it on his desk and touched his shoulder gently. "Oliver," she said softly, "you've hardly spoken since we got back. Please, don't torment yourself over illusions." Oliver looked up at her, his eyes sharp. "It wasn't an illusion, Daisy. You didn't see her because you didn't want to see her. But I did. And I'll never forget those eyes as long as I live." For a second, Daisy froze. Then, with practiced calm, she sat across from him, folding her hands. "Even if," she swallowed, steadying her tone, "even if by some miracle Diana were alive, do you think she would have stayed away this long? Do you think she wouldn't have come home to you? To her children? No, Oliver. You're clinging to a ghost, and it's destroying you." Her words hit him, but instead of breaking, they hardened his resolve. He stood, pacing. "If she's out there, then something kept her from me, something bigger than choice. And I'll find out what." Daisy's jaw tightened, though she forced a trembling sigh. "Please, Oliver, don't chase shadows, for your children's sake." But inside, panic surged. He saw her. He knows. If he keeps searching, it won't be long before the truth comes out. That night, as Oliver stared out his window at the Lagos skyline, Daisy slipped into her room, shut the door, and clasped her phone with shaking hands. She dialed a number, an old contact, one she swore she'd never call again. A man's rough voice answered. "It's been years. Why are you calling me?" Daisy whispered, her voice laced with fear. "We have a problem." He saw her. Oliver saw Diana. "You promised me she'd never cross his path again." The man chuckled darkly. "Maybe fate is stronger than promises. What do you want me to do this time?" Daisy's grip tightened on the phone. Her lips trembled before she whispered the words that sealed her heart even darker. "Make sure she disappears for good this time." The Lagos nights hummed with restless energy, but in Diana's small rented room, peace still lingered. Timothy and Tina lay curled on a mattress, their medals tucked under their pillows like treasures. Mama Grace hummed a soft hymn while folding their clothes, but her eyes kept drifting to the window. Something in her spirit was unsettled. She finally turned to Diana, who sat mending Tina's school uniform with needle and thread. "Child," Mama Grace said quietly, "did you notice the way those babies today called your children's names? The way that man, tall, broad, with eyes full of storm, looked at you before the crowd swallowed us." Diana's hand froze mid-stitch. She swallowed, her heart pounding at the memory. "I thought I imagined it," she whispered. "For a moment, I felt Oliver's eyes on me. But no, it can't be. He's far beyond my reach now." Mama Grace placed a steady hand over hers. "Fate has a way of making what's buried rise again. And when it does, no one, not even those who scheme against you, can stop it." Diana forced a smile, but inside, fear twisted in her stomach. If Oliver had truly seen her, what would it mean? Would he forgive her silence, her absence? Would he understand the chains that had kept her away? Meanwhile, across the city, Daisy sat in her car parked in the shadows of a quiet street. The man she had called earlier slipped into the passenger seat. His face was scarred, his eyes sharp like a hawk's. "You said she's alive," he muttered. "The woman we left for dead in the flood years ago. If Keys saw her, then she's been hiding." Daisy's hands trembled around the steering wheel. "She's hiding with those children of hers. I don't care how you do it, but she must not come near Oliver again. If he learns the truth, everything I've built collapses." The man smirked, cracking his knuckles. "Then it's simple. We'll watch her, follow her. When the time is right, he drew a finger across his throat. Daisy shivered but nodded. She didn't dare back down now. Yet what she didn't know was that Oliver, restless and unable to sleep, had begun his own quiet search. He had already called a private investigator, instructing him to trace the children who won that day's competition. Start with the school records. Oliver ordered, "Find me everything about Timothy and Tina, and their mother." So now, two forces were set in motion. Oliver, desperate to find Diana and Daisy's hired shadow, desperate to erase her point 2 days later. The children came running into the apartment, their laughter echoing through the small rooms. Timothy proudly waved a folded paper in the air. "Mama, look, my teacher said I wrote the best essay in the whole class." Tina spun around him, chanting, "Best in class? Best in class," before leaping into Diana's lap. Diana laughed, hugging them both tightly. "My brilliant children, Mama Grace and I are so proud of you." She kissed their foreheads, but her smile carried a weight she didn't voice. Something about the past few days, the man's eyes at the competition, the whispers in her heart, left her unsettled. That evening, as she walked to market with a basket of oranges balanced on her head, Diana noticed a man lingering at the corner. He wasn't buying, just watching. When her eyes met his, he quickly looked away. She shook off the chill creeping up her spine. Lagos is full of strangers, she told herself. But when she spotted him again outside Timothy and Tina's school the next morning, her unease grew sharper. Mama Grace noticed too. "We are being followed," she whispered as they cooked by lantern-light that night. "Someone has taken interest in you. Be careful, my daughter." Across the city, Oliver sat in his office as his investigator. Mr. Adeyemi laid files across the desk. "These are the records of Timothy and Tina," Adeyemi explained. "Enrolled at Morning Light Academy. They live with a woman called Ada, though no birth records or past identification exist for her. Her neighbors say she moved here from a village about 2 years ago with an older woman they call Mama Grace. Hard-working, honest, quiet. But, sir," Adeyemi paused, lowering his voice. "When I showed their photos to a friend at the registry, he said something strange." Oliver leaned forward, heart racing. "What?" Adeyemi slid a photo closer. It was one taken at the school, Timothy grinning proudly beside his essay. This boy's birthmark, behind the left ear. The registry clerk swore he'd seen it before, on a child registered years ago under your family name. But the file was sealed. Oliver's breath caught. His hand trembled as he traced the photograph. "Diana," he whispered, "it has to be her." For the first time in years, a flicker of hope pierced his grief. But even as Oliver's search narrowed toward truth, Daisy's hired man watched Diana's window from the shadows, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. He muttered into his phone, "She's here, living quietly with 2 kids. Tell Daisy not to worry. I'll handle it soon." And inside, Diana tucked her children into bed, unaware that the walls of her fragile new life were closing in from both sides, one in love, the other in danger. That night, the air in Surreylir felt heavier than usual. Diana lay awake, listening to Timothy and Tina's soft breathing from the next room. Her mind replayed the face of the man she'd noticed outside their school again and again. Why would anyone be watching us? She wondered. We have nothing worth taking. Mama Grace stirred beside her on the mat. "You are not sleeping, Ada," she whispered. "I can't," Diane admitted. "Something is wrong. I feel it." Before Mama Grace could answer, a faint rustle came from the front door. Then, the creak of hinges. Diana's blood turned to ice. She grabbed Mama Grace's arm. "Someone's inside." The shadow of a tall man slipped into the apartment. His footsteps were soft, deliberate. He headed straight toward the children's room. "No!" Diana cried, rushing forward. She slammed into the man with all her strength, knocking him against the wall. He cursed under his breath and shoved her aside, pulling a knife. The children woke, screaming. Mama Grace threw a stool at the intruder, giving Diana just enough time to grab a pestle from the corner. She swung it wildly, catching the man's arm and sending the knife clattering to the floor. "Help! Thief! she shouted through the window, her voice ringing into the street. Neighbors began banging on doors, shouting in alarm. Realizing he was outnumbered, the man darted back through the doorway and vanished into the night. Diana collapsed onto her knees, trembling as Timothy and Tina clung to her. "Mama, why did that man want us?" Timothy's voice quivered. She pulled them close, kissing their heads. "I don't know, my loves, but I promise no one will take you from me." The next morning, Oliver was pacing his study when Adeyemi entered, urgency written on his face. "There was an incident last night," Adeyemi reported. "The woman and her children you asked me to watch. They were attacked. A man broke into their apartment, but failed to harm them." Oliver's chest tightened. "Where are they now?" "Still at the apartment." "But, sir—" Adeyemi leaned forward, lowering his voice. From the way the man moved, this wasn't just a thief. It looked like a hired job. Someone wants those children. Oliver's decision was instant. "Give me their address. I'm going there myself." For the first time since Diana's memorial, he felt a fire burning inside him. Not grief, but resolve. Whoever this woman was, whoever those children were, he needed to see them with his own eyes. And as he drove across Lagos, his heart pounded with a single thought he couldn't silence. Could it be her? Could Diana still be alive? The taxi stopped outside the modest two-bedroom apartment in Surreylir. Oliver sat frozen for a moment, staring at the weather-worn gate. His palms were damp, his chest heaving as if his lungs had forgotten how to work. Adeyemi leaned closer. "Sir, are you certain you want to do this yourself? I can make inquiries." "No." Oliver's voice was firm, though it trembled with emotion. "If she's alive, if it's truly her, I have to see with my own eyes." He stepped out, clutching the small bouquet of lilies he had bought on impulse, Diana's favorite. Inside, Diana was washing dishes when a knock sounded at the door. Mama Grace peered out the window first, cautious. "It's a well-dressed man," she murmured, "and he's holding flowers." Diana frowned. "We don't know anyone like that here." Still, something in her chest fluttered, an odd, restless tug. When she opened the door, the world tilted. Oliver stood there, taller than she remembered, his face etched with years of grief, yet unmistakably the same man who haunted her dreams. His eyes locked onto hers, wide, disbelieving, desperate. For a moment, time froze. "Diana!" His voice cracked. The flowers slipped from his trembling hand. "My God, it is you!" Diana's lips parted, but no words came. Her heart pounded wildly, though her mind screamed, "I don't know him. I don't know him." She staggered back a step, clutching the doorframe. "Mama, who is it?" Timothy's curious voice piped from behind her. He peeked out, Tina by his side. Oliver's gaze shifted to the children, and his knees nearly buckled. Their faces, the shape of their eyes, it was like seeing his own mother and Diana reborn. Tears spilled down his cheeks. "They're mine," he whispered hoarsely. "Our babies. Diana, they're ours." Diana shook her head violently, clutching Timothy and Tina protectively. "No, stay away from us. I don't know you." The slam of the door echoed like thunder, leaving Oliver outside, gasping as if the world had ended all over again. Inside, Diana collapsed against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. The children clung to her, frightened. "Mama," Tina whispered, "why was that man crying?" Diana pressed him close, tears streaming down her face without understanding why. "I don't know, my darlings. I don't know." But deep inside, in the shadows of her fractured memory, something stirred, like a locked door rattling against its hinges. And outside, Oliver sank onto the doorstep, determined. He had found her. He wasn't leaving without the truth. Oliver didn't leave that doorstep for hours. He sat there, face in his hands, replaying the shock in Diana's eyes, the way she clutched the children as if he were a stranger who might steal them away. When Mama Grace finally stepped outside, she carried a lantern and wore a guarded expression. "Sir, it is late. You should go." Oliver rose quickly, desperation in his voice. "Please, I'm not here to hurt them. I'm her husband, Diana's husband. Those children, they're mine too." Mama Grace studied him in silence, her sharp eyes scanning his face. She saw the pain, the sincerity, the way his voice cracked on Diana's name. Ada remembers nothing of her past, she said carefully. She knows no husband, no family, only us. Oliver swallowed hard, his chest tight. Then let me remind her. Please. She may not remember me, but I remember everything. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal Diana's wedding ring. His hand shook as he held it out. This belonged to her, to us. Mama Grace's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. If what you say is true, then you must move with patience. She is fragile, pushed too hard, and she may run from you forever. Oliver nodded, tears burning his eyes. I'll wait as long as it takes. Just don't shut me out. The next morning, Daisy was sipping coffee at Oliver's mansion, flipping through a glossy magazine, when Adeyemi's name flashed across her phone. She answered briskly, irritation in her tone. Well, what news? His voice was cautious. Madam, you told me to inform you of any developments with Mr. Thompson. Yesterday he found her. Daisy froze, her cup clattering onto the saucer. Found who? The wife, Mrs. Diana Thompson, alive, with 2 children. For a moment, Daisy's mind went blank. Then rage surged through her veins, hot and violent. She slammed her fist onto the table, rattling the china. That cannot be. She died. I made sure she died. Her housemaid peeked nervously from the doorway, but Daisy's glare sent her scurrying. Taking a deep breath, Daisy steadied herself. Listen carefully, she hissed into the phone. You keep your eyes on them, all of them, the children, the old woman, and especially Diana. Report everything to me before you breathe a word to Oliver again. Do you understand? Yes, madam, Adeyemi muttered, though unease crept into his voice. When the call ended, Daisy's carefully composed mask cracked, revealing the storm beneath. She stood at the mirror, her reflection cold and twisted. No, Diana, she whispered. You will not take him from me again. Not after all these years. If you crawl back from the grave, then I'll put you back there myself. Her smile sharpened like a blade. Only this time, she murmured, I'll make sure you stay dead. Oliver returned the next morning with a shopping bag heavy with baby milk, soap, and a small wicker basket brimming with fruit. He moved differently now, less like a man in business armor, and more like someone trying to learn how to be gentle again. Adeyemi rode with him, but remained at a discreet distance, a quiet shadow in case the Scar Man or anyone else made another move. Mama Grace opened the door before he could knock. Her eyes narrowed for a heartbeat. Then she stepped aside. You come again, she said without ceremony. Why? To help, Oliver managed, and to apologize for frightening you the other day. I shouldn't have come like that. I was foolish. He held up the basket. For the children. Inside, Timothy and Tina were coloring on the floor when he entered. At the sight of him, Timothy stiffened, then relaxed as a shy grin spread across his face. Tina, braids bobbing, didn't look away. She measured him with those clear, ancient eyes and, without knowing why, waved. Hello, she said in her small, precise voice. Oliver crouched to their level. Hello, he whispered back, voice breaking. I brought things. He set the milk down, then reached into his pocket and, with hands that trembled only once, produced a wedding ring. He did not hold it up as proof so much as a talisman against his own fear. Diana watched in the doorway of the tiny kitchen, sleeves rolled, face trained in a mask of calm. Mama Grace spoke for her. We are grateful, but we do not need charity. Ada is proud. The words were protective but not unkind. Oliver nodded. I know. I only want to help, if you will allow it. If you will let me. He didn't finish. The look on his face said the rest. Let me be part of their lives. Mama Grace's eyes flicked to Diana. There was a long, private conversation in that glance. Finally, with the kind of caution that comes from years of saving fragile things, she said, We will accept help, but we will not be rushed. She has been scared. Remember that. Over the weeks that followed, Oliver kept his promise. He brought formula and books, paid for a seamstress to mend uniforms, arranged for minor medical checks after break-in, and, most important, sat in the courtyard while Timothy and Tina read aloud to him, their voices bright and unstoppable. He learned their favorite lullaby and hummed it awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. Once, when he sang a line of the old song he and Diana used to sing, Diana's hand stilled over the washing she was doing. A small tremor passed across her face. For one breath her eyes filled with recognition. Then the moment slipped like water through her fingers. She clutched the hem of her wrapper and turned away, as if letting the glimpse disappear would keep her safe. Those glimpses multiplied, little shards of memory that arrived and fled before she could catch them. A fragment of Diana's laugh when Tina tumbled. The scent of Oliver's cologne that smelled like rain, a familiar cadence to a sentence. None of them were whole, but they threaded through her days like hidden stitches. Daisy watched all of this from a distance, and her smile hardened. She had expected Oliver's grief to keep him pliable forever. Instead, he was knitting a new life around those children. One Daisy could not simply slide into. She tightened her hold elsewhere. Quietly, efficiently, she put her plan into motion. Her first move was legislative rather than violent. Using her connections, board members, a pet socialite on the hospital's welfare council, she submitted an anonymous complaint suggesting irregularities in the paperwork of Ada's children. The complaint was punctuated with just enough plausible detail to pull the attention of a cash-starved child protection unit, a woman living without identification, children with no birth certificates, an apartment in a high-risk area. It would prompt a check, routine, bureaucratic, but effective. Daisy also reopened old lines to Dr. Okafor, the man who had trafficked babies years ago. He was greedy, corruptible, and, crucially, exposed. Daisy visited him one dusk in a clinic where the lights were always too dim and his hands always smelled faintly of disinfectant and something cheaper. She offered money in the story. Find any paperwork, any slip, anything that connects Ada to that hospital years ago. For me, she did not specify why. She only said, "It must look like a coincidence, doctor. For my sake." Okafor smiled like a man who had never learned to refuse a bribe. "For a price," he said, "I can find traces. People forget things. Paperwork disappears." He tapped his temple. "For more, I can make sure the right people see it." Daisy left with plan, and with adrenaline loosening the last seams of conscience. If a social worker knocked on Mama Grace's door, if a file was found connecting Ada to a suspicious birth years ago, if the police were given cause to take the children temporarily for safety reasons, Oliver would be forced to act. He would bring them into his world, and Daisy would be there, helpful, indispensable, the grieving woman turned savior. But bureaucratic moves take time, and the heart magic that had pulled them together on that competition day worked faster than papers. Timothy loved numbers. He solved a small accounting problem at the market, and the shop owner, impressed, mentioned to a neighbor who ran a modest scholarship program in Ikoyi. The neighbor came by the apartment with interest and a small form to fill. "We want to help brilliant children," she said. "We don't ask many questions." Oliver learned of that visit from Adeyemi, who had kept quietly watching and now delivered updates like knitted lifelines. "Sir," Adeyemi said, "a sponsor visited the children's slum school. They mentioned them at the foundation. The headmistress gave their names. They called them gentle geniuses." Oliver smiled with ferocity that could have hurt. For the first time since the crash, hope felt less like a phantom and more like a tool. He applied to the sponsor, signed papers, and without public fanfare committed money for Timothy and Tina's tuition. The gesture was small but seismic. Education would anchor them in the city, bring them into the same orbit as Peter and Priscilla, and tighten the invisible threads Daisy so desperately wanted to cut. That night, as Diana tucked the children into bed, she said softly into the dim room, "One day, we will not be afraid." Timothy yawned and mumbled, "Mama, will the man who sang to us come again?" Diana paused. Hearing in the child's question and name, she could almost remember. Outside, in his gated world not far away, Oliver lay awake and stared at the ceiling, picturing that same small face. Neither of them knew the true shape of the future, only that a collision was coming, slow, inevitable, and carrying with it the promise of memories reclaimed and the threat of old sins unearthed. The collision Daisy engineered came quietly at first, Just a knock at Mama Grace's door on a humid Thursday afternoon. Two uniformed child welfare officers stood with clipboards, their shirts crisp but their eyes weary. "Madam," one began, "we've received a report concerning the children here. We'll need to see their guardianship papers, birth records, and residence identification." Mama Grace stiffened. Diana's hands froze on the laundry she was rinsing. Timothy and Tina clung to her wrapper, wide-eyed. We don't have those," Diana admitted, voice faltering. "The hospital—" She stopped, panic rising like a tide. The officers exchanged a practiced look. "We understand, but without records, we must conduct a review for the children's safety." They spoke politely, almost apologetically, but their words carried a quiet threat. "Temporary custody may be required while verification is underway," one added. At that, Diana's body reacted before her mind could catch up. She pulled both children close, her heartbeat hammering against their small shoulders. No, please. They are mine." Her voice broke on the last word. Mama Grace stepped forward, stern as iron. "These children have been raised here since birth. They have never known another home. If you try to take them, you will answer to me." The older officer softened but shook his head. "We don't decide, madam. We follow procedure." Adeyemi, watching from the street, dialed immediately. Within 20 minutes, Oliver's car rolled up, dark glass cutting through the afternoon light. He stepped out with authority and grief-worn dignity, his presence altering the very air around the officers. "What's the meaning of this?" His voice was not raised, but it carried. The officers explained. Oliver listened, his gaze sliding to Diana. Her trembling hands, the way she clutched the children as though the world were trying to steal them again. He drew a long breath, then reached into his jacket for his wallet. "I am Oliver Adeko," he said, offering a card. "These children are under my sponsorship. Their schooling, their welfare, it is documented. Any questions you have can come to me directly." The officers faltered. Everyone in Lagos knew the Adeko name. One cleared his throat. "Sir, if you can provide documentation, then perhaps—" "I will," Oliver cut in. "You will not harass them again without contacting me first. Is that clear?" The officers, unwilling to make enemies, nodded and left. Inside the apartment, silence pressed like a weight. Timothy and Tina buried their faces in Oliver's suit jacket, unafraid now, as though he were the only shield that could hold. Diana, shaken, watched as he stroked their backs gently, whispering promises he could barely form. Her eyes filled with tears, frustration, relief, confusion. She whispered, almost to herself, "Why does it feel like you've always been here?" Oliver's hand stilled. His chest tightened at the words. But he said nothing, afraid that if he spoke, he might shatter the fragile thread pulling her closer to the truth. What none of them knew was that Daisy, sitting in her glossy apartment uptown, already had a second wave planned. Dr. Okafor had delivered a faded photocopy of a birth ledger altered neatly, with Ada scrawled beside the name of a baby unaccounted for. It was fraudulent, fragile, but to the right eyes, it could ignite suspicion. She smiled as she tucked the papers into a file marked anonymous submission. For Daisy, the first attempt was only a test. The real blow was yet to come. But for Oliver and Diana, something deeper was stirring. That night, when Oliver lingered longer than usual, Diana found herself humming absent-mindedly while folding clothes. It was the same lullaby Timothy and Tina loved, the same lullaby Oliver had once sung with her on their wedding night. She froze mid-note, heart pounding. Her mind flashed with a blurred image. White fabric, his voice blending with hers, laughter. She gasped softly, clutching her chest. Oliver's eyes widened. "Diana," he whispered. For the first time in years, her lips shaped the name as if recalling it from a dream. Oliver. The room fell into silence. It was only a fragment, but fragments can become a storm. That single word, Oliver, lingered in the room like a bell struck deep inside a cathedral. Oliver's chest tightened, his eyes shimmering with a mix of awe and fear, as though he'd been handed both salvation and heartbreak at once. "You said my name," he whispered, barely trusting his own ears. Diana's brow furrowed. She pressed a trembling hand to her temple, as if trying to hold together pieces of herself that didn't quite fit. I don't know why I said it. It just came. Oliver stepped forward cautiously, as if she might vanish again. Because you remember, even if it's only a piece. You know me, Diana. But just as quickly, panic flickered in her eyes. She pulled back, shaking her head violently. No, I don't know you. I can't. She grabbed a laundry basket and fled to the kitchen, leaving Oliver standing there, aching but unwilling to give up. That night, when the children were asleep, Mama Grace sat across from Diana at the small wooden table. The single bulb above them buzzed faintly. You're troubled, Mama Grace said quietly. Diana's eyes were wet. When he looks at me, it's like he knows every part of me I can't remember. And when he says my name, Diana, something inside me stirs. But Mama, I'm afraid. What if it's not real? What if I lose myself all over again? Mama Grace reached across and squeezed her hand. Sometimes, the heart remembers what the mind forgets. You need not be afraid of truth, Ada. Truth will not harm you. Lies will. While Diana wrestled with fragments of memory, Daisy was weaving her net. In her private study, she spread out the forged documents Dr. Okafor had delivered. Altered hospital logs, mismatched birth dates, and a fabricated death certificate for a woman named Diana Odeko. To anyone unfamiliar with Diana's story, the papers looked damning. They suggested the woman Oliver had found wasn't Diana at all, but fraud, a woman living under a false name, raising children who couldn't be legally accounted for. Daisy tapped the papers with a lacquered fingernail, her smile as sharp as broken glass. Let's see how Oliver defends his ghost bride in a court of law. She called her lawyer, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. I've come across some troubling documents about a woman in Suralere. Yes, for the welfare of her children, I think the authorities should know. Strictly confidential, of course. The storm broke 2 weeks later. Oliver arrived at Mama Grace's flat early one morning to find chaos at the door. A uniformed bailiff was reading out a summons, and 2 stern social workers stood ready with clipboards. Diana clutched Tina and Timothy, her face pale, her body trembling. They say I'm not their real mother, she choked. That I stole them, that I'm a liar. Oliver's blood ran cold. He snatched the papers, scanning them. His jaw tightened. This is nonsense. She is their mother, and she is my wife. The bailiff gave a rehearsed shrug. Then you can prove it in court. Until then, the children may be placed in state custody for protection. Timothy began to cry, clinging harder to Oliver's trousers. Tina buried her face in Diana's chest, sobbing. Oliver wrapped an arm around them, his voice steely. No one takes these children anywhere, not while I live. He looked at Diana then, his eyes burning with determination. This is Daisy's doing. She's trying to erase you again. But I swear to you, Diana, this time, I won't let her win. Diana's breath hitched at the name. Daisy. Something sharp and dark flickered in her mind. A cold smile, a glass-shattering pain. Her knees nearly gave way. For the first time, she whispered through trembling lips, "She tried to kill me." Oliver's heart stopped. The fragments were becoming sharper. The truth was clawing its way back. And Daisy, watching from a distance, had no idea that the very storm she had unleashed was waking the memories she most feared. Do you want to know what the courtroom battle Daisy sets in motion, or Diana's memory returning more vividly, piece by piece, until she begins to confront Daisy directly? This is not the end. If you have enjoyed watching the story up to this point, please give this video a thumbs up and type part 3 in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you still haven't done so by now. See you in the next.